Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Septi, joined alongside Orion today. We are here to bring you some NACL Open qualifiers action here. We are going to be following Lotus Esports over the next 2 weekends as they take part in this fun competition to qualify for NACL. We are here in round two of the Open qualifier, where some stuff has happened behind the scenes where Lotus now has a 1-0 game lead. Don't worry, you didn't miss anything. There was no gameplay. But we are starting this best of three with Lotus up 1-0, and we are into draft, Orion. Regardless of the stuff going on before, we are here now, and let's get into it.
Yeah, definitely some shenanigans, some would say. Unfortunately, as you can see, Mutah Paradise not having any bans for them across the board and already facing a one game deficit in a best of three. So they're going to have a big hill to climb. Round one, they were able to get the victory, Mutah Paradise 2-0 against their opponent. So that's why they're facing Lotus, who had a bye in the very first round. So we do see, obviously, going with the Ezreal as part of their B1 option here. If you see Karma as the answer, pretty good option. Obviously, Ezreal being that pokey, like long range champion, you want something that can kind of dominate the lane alongside of it. So the Karma is a very nice pickups, and usually, obviously, you'll either see kind of like an 80 carry pairing, like a Caitlyn. I was gonna say that kind of matched the range of the Ezreal, or they could have opted in for a jungle pick here, but choosing to go ahead and solidifying that bot side down here.
Yeah, Karma Caitlyn, one of those very premier bot lanes currently so far. I was curious to see what it was that Muto was going to do to pair with the Ezreal now that they are sort of down that premier support. A lot of people have been opting for that Karma B1, so it's interesting to see that they let it drop to red
Mhm.
side. I think I saw this exact exchange similarly in LCS earlier today, but Nautilus is going to be the pairing. Definitely opts for a much stronger all in, but Nautilus not easily able to deal with all that poke that will come out from Globby and Mixture on that bot side. So it's going to be probably on Eat to do a lot of roaming this game to try and make the most amount of value out of this Nautilus pick and allow Ezreal to sort of do their best to stay alive onto the tower.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those options too, where like it's a not a support pairing with the Ezreal that can be very aggressive and kind of match the ability to kind of fight back against a Caitlyn Karma lane. But it is one of those situations where if you aren't successful in an all in, this Kate Karma can really just push you into your turret and not really leave you much room to breathe, unfortunately. But kind of going with for what looks like a bit of a reset comp here for the Viego, just trying to really kill that one specific target and kind of move on to the next. Nautilus is very good at that alongside of the Viego. So it looks like they already kind of have an identifying composition here. So curious to see what Lotus is going to end up counteracting with that. Going to end up being the Pantheon here. I would imagine most likely for Fire here, a champion that obviously has the global ultimate that can apply a lot of pressure, but it is still like very good at skirmishing. And inherently, if you want someone that's able to survive a lot of that primary engaged, Pantheon with the empowered E can definitely do that.
Yeah, it also, like you were saying, it's Pantheon E is so helpful in negating those engages. It also is really good at playing around the Caitlyn Karma. It's gonna let them push really hard and constantly have that hover from the Skyfall behind them. Moving on into second ban phase, no bans at all in this game for Muta, as again there was some timing stuff going on in the background, and so they have lost both game one and their bans. So it's just gonna be Lotus with the 5 bans. It's gonna be Ari Talia, which is very interesting that they're going for Talia. Kind of screams like an Ari on 4 here to me. If I were to oh, I'm so dumb. You know what? Ari got banned. Why would we ban Ari and Talia? That is very interesting. Unless we're thinking of something maybe on the lines of like a Victor, just to be really safe and solid, and get that proper push in the mid lane. But I mean, we will see. Reppy is a very solid player in that mid lane, I imagine. Um, it could be something like an Orianna, like a Syndra.
All right.
But no, it's got to be Rise, Premier
Yeah.
Champion in the mid lane. I'm surprised they didn't ban Casio, but maybe with the
Well,
range of Caitlyn Karma
yeah,
there.
I guess the idea behind it too is you've got champions like the heavy reset composition, so they really wanted to make sure that they wouldn't have the easier like timing of layering one form of CC and being able to tile it onto another. So if they were to have one of those options, playing Rise, a short range mage, into those champions with a Viego would be kind of hard to kind of pilot it out. So that they specifically had, I would imagine, this pick in mind, knowing with the bans to come through. It is the way to answer, kind of have that long range poke a little bit it's a little bit slightly anti-synergistic with the Viego in mind, but it is very good, obviously, with the Ezra to kind of hold that range and really make it very hard for a champion like the Rise to kind of have a hard time playing in some of these team fights. But obviously, we'll have, right now they don't necessarily have a great button to kind of get onto a Caitlyn. Through the back line a little bit here, so I'm kind of curious as whether we'll end up rounding it out with the top side. There's that major engagement in the Malphite. That's kind of what I was thinking. Maybe a Malphite, maybe a Rumble over the top as well for that ultimate, just to kind of layer that damage. But it's going to end up being a Malphite. Gygar predominantly is a top that's played most of the AD bruisers. Does have a champion like Cho'Gath and a little bit of AP with Rumble in his toolkit, but the Silas pick currently being covered, definitely one of the better champions into a champion like Malphite that just kind of exists. Not only do you get to do the magic damage to the Malphite, but also you essentially get to become a better Malphite when you are able to collect his ultimate.
Malfight with a kit is what we like to say in the industry. Um, yeah, I mean, I want to take another note on that Hui pick. It's going to be really solid to allow for that D push versus the Caitlyn Karma, which I mean can be done even more so than that Ezreal. But yeah, this Malphite is definitely going to be a button going forward, but it's going to be sort of the meme from the Joker where it's him in the taxi driving one way, or maybe not from the Joker, but it's like a guy driving in a taxi one way and a girl going the other way. It's going to be sort of like that with the Silas and the Malphite as they start ulting the back lines. Although I imagine Karma will be able to keep this Caitlyn a lot safer than the Nautilus will, as it looks like we got a little bit of a buggy mess here. Some champions mixed around, but do not worry, we'll run down the teams for you. On the blue side, it's going to be Malphite in that top lane. It's going to be Viego jungle. It's going to be Hui mid, and then Ezra Nautilus bot lane. And then on red, it will be Silas top with with a Pantheon jungle, Rise mid, and then a Caitlyn Karma bot lane. This is going to be a really interesting game, purely because I'm interested to see how it is that Surenfire is able to navigate having such a volatile top lane as well as a bot lane that wants to constantly push, as well as, I mean, respectfully, a mid laner that is very immobile versus a jungle support duo on Mutah that is going to be trying to consistently pinch that mid lane. So there's going to be a lot on Surenfire's plate this game to keep things on time. And if they're able to get in the flow of it, it'll be very fun to see.
Yeah, I think he's definitely gonna have a major responsibility, specifically in the early game, to really kind of establish like what kind of pressure points he's looking to have. I would imagine, having a champion. Let's see. Let me pull it back up to make sure I got it perfectly right. Having a champion like the Caitlyn and the Karma to really have the pressure down the bottom side should almost guarantee the fact that bottom scuttle will be a very easy pressure point early on in this game. And then I imagine for a champion like the Viego on his side, he definitely does have the ability to make a little bit of early plays happen. But I think if he goes for an early play and Pantheon is there, he is the much better skirmishing jungler in the early stages of the game. So he may actually run into a lot of trouble. And I think that with his lanes naturally not being the aggressors for the most part, I would say mid lane's probably the most even. But he's gonna get pushed in top lane. He's gonna get pushed in bot lane. So they may be able to use those pressure points to really invade the Viego early with the power of the Pantheon and cause a lot of havoc that way. So definitely gonna have to be really important for on the side of the Viego here. I was gonna say Sierra Leone. To really be able to make sure that he is not going to have like the ability to be pressured off of his camps.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to see what this Hueys can do in the mid lane because that's really gonna be the linchpin to allow Viego to be safe and to actually hit their creeps without a lot of worry. It's gonna be a lot of team warding going into this game for the blue side, just making sure that Viego can be safe and can actually approach these lanes as undetected as possible. I think it's also gonna be on the jungler for Mutah to be really creative to try and path around these wards to sort of collapse on the very immobile bot lane and mid lane that exist on Lotus. Or sorry, yeah, that exists on Lotus. I keep looking at the Rise and I'm like,
Yeah.
still both very immobile. And I want to see if, to be honest, if this Malphite can get themselves involved into the game, can sort of, really change the way it works for this blue side here. We'll be pathing down, hopefully, as soon as they hit level 6, maybe trying to just find a pressure kill onto the mid lane, blow a flash on the Rise so Viego can get an easier access, can make Nautilus have an easier access as well. Um, But like this is exciting because there's so many permutations of how this game can play out. Obviously, there's the boring standard Kate Karma get pushed all game. It gets covered by the by the Pantheon. Silas is 1v1 on the top side perma because both teams are focused on making sure AD carries and mid laners can get farm. But I imagine that we will see a lot of nonsense, potentially some solo kills, and definitely some crazy jungle fighting. As both of these are really volatile and want to get some action going.
Yeah, I think the early parts of the game, I would say definitely is very heavily favored into Lotus. But if Muta Paradise is able to kind of survive the earliest parts of the game and kind of work their way through it, they may be able to, like, as they get to the later parts of the team fights, just absolutely blow somebody up with the Nautilus, with the Malphite, kind of just chain CC people. So I'm kind of curious to see just how much Lotus is able to like really pressure, which Lotus is the higher seed in this tournament. They are the higher rated player. So typically a composition that they have that can be very aggressive is very much in their favor. But typically, like, momentum can definitely play a favor in situations like this where, if Muta Paradise is able to survive and able to kind of duke it out a little bit against these guys, that's when all of a sudden you're like, hey, we can actually start believing and really start kind of working their way through the tournament, or through this game, I should say, and maybe even surprise some people.
Yeah, I mean, Muta did have to play a best of three earlier today, so they are more warm compared to Lotus, especially after some nonsense from earlier on. So they definitely have that sort of ball rolling advantage going into this one. As you said, better players currently on Lotus, but more recent success for Muta. Maybe they're riding a high from earlier today. Either way, we will find out in just a moment. We are going to take a short break while we wait for the spectator delay to get into game number 2 of Lotus versus Muta Paradise. Hello, everyone. We are back with game number 2 of Lotus versus Mutah Paradise. We are on the Rift now. I'm very excited, Orion. We talked through the many permutations of the possibilities of where this game could go, but now we're here on the Rift for the decider potentially of this best of 3. It's yeah, this there is a skill disparity, but this could still be a very exciting game as a typical start to level 1 going on as wards getting dropped. Bot lane's warding the middle bush, which I understand, but also this is a very weird adaptation that I think has happened over the year, and I don't quite understand it because it happens every game.
Well, I think it's because mostly so like you don't really need to worry about kind of playing for your jungler anymore unless they're instantly going for an invade, which typically you should be able to rotate over in time and kind of get there. So really, especially now that you have these range supports that are playing for lane domination, you really want to get as quickly to the lane as possible. And if the other team is not ready or paying attention, you can really punish them by taking an aggressive position, like you see Mixture here. It's not really the Nautilus can actually do anything unless he actually actively lands a hook, and we saw just barely off screen there, Nautilus was able to miss. So the second that Nautilus misses that hook, there's literally nothing he can do to a champion like the Karma. So she can play as aggressively forward as she really wants to and really punish this Ezreal. As you can see, they're going to get level 2 first. And this is kind of the downside, really, of picking a champion like Nautilus into these champions, whereas they can build up this gigantic wave. You have Pantheon, which technically he is pathing away from them, but they don't necessarily know that he's pathing away. So the lower HP that they get down here in this bottom side, this Pantheon can really put pressure on them. If he was here, obviously he's not. But if he was here, he could theoretically look for a dive play. Or if they wanted to, they could then start pressuring the Viego into his camps with the pressure that they already have.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Pantheon was going to be pathing away. That is a really important thing in this matchup where, especially considering Mutah Paradise have no information on this Pantheon, the assumption would be, at least to my understanding, that you path towards the lane that's going to give you the most prio. Granted, there's some junglers that like pathing to the lane that's going to be most chaotic, but typically I feel like you wouldn't be pathing towards the Sylas lane, especially when your Caitlyn lane wants to be constantly pushed up, constantly auditing the tower, and you'd be wanting to really protect that as best you can. I'm curious to see if we will see a bit of a fake out here from Idris Elba, because a lot of times what junglers will do when they think they're pathing on parallel with the other jungler and they won't get to first crab, they will try and walk straight to the other side. And so we'll see what Idris Elba does, because we could actually meet Pantheon at that top crab, but it looks like the Viego will try and potentially spot out this bot crab. Maybe there was information that Pantheon started bot, and I'm not sure, or maybe they're just going to go for a mid gank here to try and get some pressure. As looks like Surenfire is going to try and do the same thing here onto the Pantheon. Going to get the flash from the Malphite, but the Abscond Abduct going to land at the Malphite, and it's going to be first blood for Lotus here on this top side, going the way of the Pantheon. Very nice gank. No summoners even blown on the red side here, and Malphite is going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, that was really well played by Geiger. Obviously, off screen there for the most part. We didn't really see a whole lot of what was actually happening top lane, but Geiger basically was able to push his lane all the way in into the fact that he was able to really kind of have the wave bounce back to him as the time that Pantheon was going to be arriving. So that was probably something that was preordained ahead of time in the draft. Actually, hook landing.
Hook going to land onto Caitlyn here. Ezreal going to Mystic step forward, and it's going to be Caliber net. No, but it's going to be a kill for this Ezreal here. Mixture now going to try and walk this one out. Fully stacked lethal tempo on low cortisol as Karma is going to try and flash away. Will not do it. Tries to use the Metro W to get some health back, but it's not going to be enough. Double kill onto low cortisol. This Ezreal is now cooking in the bot side.
Yeah, huge misplay there from Globby in the bot lane there, not positioning directly behind his minions, and great punish there by the Nautilus, understanding like, hey, we can actually look for this fight. And Nautilus Ezreal is actually a duo that can do a lot of early game damage. You've got the lethal tempo on the Ezreal, plus his passive stacking with every single ability that lands, and Caitlyn doesn't really have the ability to match auto for auto with an Ezreal at this stage of the game. So great punish on the boss side, and all of a sudden we're talking about, getting some momentum, feeling good about yourself at this stage of the game, and all of a sudden you're kind of put yourself in a good position. Make sure you're looking for a play mid.
Yeah, it's gonna try and land the root onto the Hui here. Maybe not going to be enough, as Idris Elba going to be here to collapse, and no flash in the Karma means a free kill for the Viego. But remember, no Heartbreaker means that they're going to have to stay in this Karma form for a little bit. Nautilus is here now. Hook going to not land onto Surenfire, as it's just going to be a 1-for-0, and the ball is rolling now for Mutah Paradise, and the Viego is getting a little bit of gold on their champion, and so it could be problematic. We talked about it before, reset compositions. are pretty deadly here. Oh no, sorry, the killing onto Hui, which is even better, to be honest. They are getting pushed out of this lane by Reppy, and so they're going to be able to get just that little bit more gold, going to be able to pick up that Sapphire Crystal and start being able to control the wave just a bit more.
Yeah, I think it was a really good read there. Obviously, we had the bot lane play happen, so mixture from base, recognizing that he didn't really have to be down there for his Caitlyn to absorb the wave. He said, "Okay, I'm gonna actually make a play mid lane," but Idris Elba able to actually collect be able to be there for that play. So see a really heavy trade here, almost actually in lethal range there. I think it would have been very close, but
we are in lethal range here. Wowza is gonna have to buffer R if they potentially go for this. And we have Sternfire on that top side here. Although the ult's going to come out from the way, trying to get some damage down onto Rise. I don't think this is going to be a lethal trade here, but it will be an exchange of HP and mana. And it will be Wowza actually forced off this top wave here with Sternfire nearby. But hold on, Reppy's so low, no ghost available, no mana, as the way going to try and walk them down with the ghosts of themselves. Flash from Reppy here. Zexelf trying to find something here. Going to be fishing a little bit more potentially. Not going to find anything, but take a look at the Silas trying to be sneaky in the river. Will find Wowza here in just a second. Yep, going to land the Unstoppable Force onto the Malphite. No reaction time from the top laner, and it's going to be a solo kill for Silas on this top side.
Yeah, and this is that match that we were talking about earlier, where the Silas is basically a Malphite with a walking kit that actually has a lot of problems. But no time for talking here. It's not else.
Yeah, Idris Elba is going to be on the bot side. Hook going to land onto Caitlyn. No flash available. This Caitlyn is just going to go down. It's going to be a 1-for-1 so far. But Sternfire is here, going to try and get a trade onto the Malphite, or onto the Nautilus. Sorry, will do so. But it's going to be another kill onto this Viego. And I feel like we're trying to paddle water out of a sinking boat right now on this bot side, and it is not working.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate there using the Pantheon ulti. Unfortunately, it ends up being a 2-for-1 at the end of that play. Obviously, once again, it's a hook landing from the Nautilus. Wasn't quite level 6 yet to really be able to chain the kill there onto the Karma potentially, but was still able to collect the kill there onto the Caitlyn. And I think it's definitely one of those things where if you are playing a bot lane like a Caitlyn and a Karma, you are pretty much like, you really need to stay ahead of the curve on a lot of these situations, because you eventually, like, it gets to a point where if you start falling behind, you as a champion only do damage. Like, Caitlyn doesn't do anything else besides maybe have a little bit of CC with her trap line. So if she starts getting outscaled by a champion like Ezreal, who does have the ability to, play from long range, play very aggressively, arcane shifting forward, and be able to provide a lot of that damage, then all of a sudden it's like the dynamics between the dynamic between these bot lanes become very different very quickly. So for Lotus, they're gonna have to be able to figure it out here quicker than later in terms of how they're actually able to salvage this game for the Caitlyn.
Yeah, the one positive is they are being able to keep up in CS despite all of this really aggressive fighting going on. And Globby's gonna have to try and lock in here, because as we see on the spot side, it looks like it could have just been a little bit of lax and not knowing where this Viego was. They did have a ward on the top side, so they knew that the camps were up and Viego was not there. As the hook gonna land onto the flashless Caitlyn, and that's just gonna be wraps for the Caitlyn. As now it looks as though the push on the boss side going the way of Mutah Paradise, and Caitlyn and Karma not feeling safe enough to have that same level of push. As it looks like we are potentially, is it just me?
No, I think
we're back. We're back. But yeah, I mean, the push now in favor of this Ezreal, who is now so strong with those kills in their pocket, as Mixer just trying to find some angle back into the lane, but it doesn't really matter. The Void Grub's going to go down the way of Lotus, which will be nice once some assistance is given to this Caitlyn Karma, and they're going to be able to start pushing the waves more aggressively. And Ryan, I feel like they need to try and focus their attention more towards this bot side. I feel like it's been all the action on Mutah Paradise affecting this bot lane so far.
Yeah, but I think it's also one of those things currently where if they do continue to go for these plays and they continue kind of to not be successful, it's like it's kind of playing into the hands of Mutah Paradise a little bit. Like, yes, they have been the aggressors, they have been able to make the plays first, but I think you're currently in a situation, especially if this Ezreal is able to complete this Triforce in a little bit here, it's going to be very hard to even continue making these plays. And you see Mixture posturing aggressively here, really trying to kind of punish their mistakes. But honestly, at this play, if a hook were to land here on a Mixture with the chain CC from the Nautilus ultimate, it may just be a kill. And Idris Elba, he is kind of recognizing this. He does want to constantly look for it.
Yeah, Nautilus gonna look for a Dredge here, not gonna hit it, gonna go wide, not even gonna get the hook onto the wall as Idris Elba now gonna show on this bot side, but
Oh, here's
here
Rise.
comes the Realm Warp into the bot side here. It will be the Pantheon with him. Trendfire gonna be the recipient of that Nautilus ulti, but it will be Caitlyn getting a nice kill onto the Ezreal as Dredgeline gonna land. I don't think you want this one, Nautilus, as the damage is not quite gonna be there to take them down, but it will be a kill onto this Caitlyn here. Finally, some action coming from Lotus on the bot side, and it will allow this Caitlyn to get a foot back in this lane.
Yeah, good use of the Realm Warp there. Obviously does end up missing out on a wave there in the mid lane. Good job by Excessive to really push that in. But if you're Reppy, you're perfectly fine taking the slight deficit there to really try to salvage the situation down to the bot side. And really, it's just a nice punish. You know, we saw the over-aggressive. I felt like if Depth Charge was used first there on the immediate play and then the hook afterwards with the chain CC, they may have been able to get the kill there onto the Karma, but opting to try to land the hook first ended up unfortunately missing there, and then the Realm Warp over the top. That's kind of the one thing that's like very nice about Lotus's composition, like we were saying earlier, where you're obviously going to have these champions that are playing very aggressively, like the Rise, like the Caitlyn, but they do have to really kind of have the backup with the Pantheon over the top, as well as, you know, even possibly the Realm Warp like we just saw. So this does mean that Dragon is spawning up. Pantheon is on the top side of the map, so he is going to have a hard time getting back down here because he does have his ultimate on a cooldown. So this may end up just possibly being a forego for Lotus here, because this Ezreal is on Triforce. Caitlyn does not quite have her item just yet. So currently, Mutah Paradise is a little bit stronger. They do have the Malphite already down here, so I would have a very hard time imagining they may go for this. But Pantheon is starting to come down. Rise is pushing the mid lane. Oh, here we go.
Hook gonna land as well onto the Sylas here. It is just going to be an absolute destruction of Sylas on this bot side here. It did not look like Lotus were really in a position to fight this with this Dragon. Gonna go the way of MP here. And it looks like Lotus are still going to try and go here, but Nautilus flashing forward, going to land the Dredge line and the Death Charge onto Caitlyn, who was forced to use both their subs. Snaptrap going to try and find some spacing for them. Mafia going to flash forward as the Dredge line is going to land on Caitlyn, and a Mystic Shot will take them down.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I felt fairly confident that Lotus was actually not going to go for that because they weren't really in the area, but Gygar taking too many steps forward, and a nice little trigger there by Wowza to say, hey, I'm going to go for this play, and a chain CC there, able to pick up the kill, and then, honestly, the immediate play afterwards, the second Sylas dies, I feel like
Trendfire in the ball lane here, though. Karma going to land that root onto the Ezreal, trying to find a way in here, but Trendfire gonna get stopped here by the Dredge line. Looking onto low cortisol, will find that first stun here as the Pantheon will just be able to knock this one down, and a Rune Prison from Rise will be able to collect that kill. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. It seemed as though there was a disconnect from Lotus there. Surenfire was clearing their camps up towards the top side. Meanwhile, Sylas was stepping into River after it was the Mixture. I think a lot of it started from even the setup, because Mixture was forced out of the River by Idris Elba and the Nautilus there, and the vision control was just not ever in their favor. And so when Sylas stepped up, there was not even a doubt in the world from Wowza to pull the trigger on that unstoppable force. And without Flash, Sylas was just absolutely a sitting duck there with no one behind him, no one to give him a shield. And it was over before it even began.
Yeah, it does honestly seem like Lotus right now is playing a little carelessly. It does feel like, you know, I don't want to say disrespecting their opponents, but like we were saying earlier, there is a very, like, I guess, a clear gap between the two teams in terms of their overall LP, like, solo queue abilities. So sometimes when you play against people like that, you can often try to, like, play certain situations because, like, oh, there's no possible way I can get actually punished here. But, I mean, to be honest, Mutah Paradise has done a very good job of actually punishing them when they are making the mistakes like they should. And also making really good plays as Gygar, once again, overstepping his bounds.
Yeah, absolutely no chance there as the Grand Skyfall coming in now. As Surenfire trying to find a way to turn this one back, but no, it's going to be the Unstoppable Force into the Depth Charge, into the Heartbreaker. Somehow Surenfire is still alive. Depth Charge going to land, going to take down the Lotus Jungler. As it looks like Mutah Paradise, I thought it was in two. I thought Idris Elba was stepping too far forward, but it doesn't look like Gygar was, you know, really giving enough respect to the fact that their team would have been behind them, as Reppy and Mixer now trying to make sure that Surenfire doesn't lose their entire jungle. But it's not going to be enough. This Viego is getting very, very strong now, as 2 kills go the way of Mutah Paradise. The gold lead, though, now finally in favor of this blue side here. It was still in favor of Lotus. Yeah, Sylas got way too close to the sun there, tried to fight Idris Elba, but had Excessive and Wowza in the back. Surenfire did a nice job dodging that fear there, but it's not going to be enough, as just the layering of CC is so insane that I was shocked that he was able to live there for a second, but the well-timed Judge line from Eat, Kill, Lose will secure the death of the Lotus jungler there. As now back on live, we're seeing some fighting potentially over the ward setup here. Surenfire and Mixture trying to work together to clear out this bot river and give Caitlyn just a little bit of breathing room so she can collect these waves, but it is very hard now with how fed the jungle mid support trio of MP are.
Yeah, and I would also say, like, I mean, oh, actually, we did play ultimate coming down. I don't think it's going to result in anything too much.
No,
here.
it will.
Actually,
Dredgeline going to land here onto the Pantheon, and it's not going to be enough. This guy is just going down. Surenfire is trying so hard to hold the space, trying so hard to allow their carries to scale, but this Nautilus and Viego combo are working so well to punish the space.
Yeah, Nautilus just barely able to kind of get around that corner there to land that hook. I felt like he wasn't quite able to get the distance, but thankfully for him, he was able to get that kill. But like we've been saying, you know, so far, even though it's 11-5 in the kill score, the gold lead is still relatively exactly the same because they've had a lot of pressure. But Malphite trying to change that a little bit.
Hold
here.
on, Orion.
The bot
Yeah,
side.
TB behind Dredgeline. Dredgeline and Depth Charge going to land onto Caitlyn here, but she does not know that there's a Malphite behind her. Realm Warp coming in from the Rise, though, it will be a 2v3, as Malphite going to finally use that Unstoppable Force onto the Rise as Mixer trying to keep their mid laner alive, and here is Silas. Going to miss the Abduct, as he will be able to steal the Malphite ulti and go in, knock down Lord Cortisol, but now Excessive is here, as we see Silas trying to potentially go forward here, but with the Pantheon so far away, with no Grand Skyfall available, it should be potentially difficult, as we are back to live now. Surenfire did show up, is going to be able to use that E to run away, gets that move speed from getting the empowered ability. Mixer as well now with their jungler. Gonna use the scouting lens to, oh my goodness, the pop from Excessive is so much here, as now finally the Viego is here, as Mixer is trying to run for the hills. Excessive, though, with the speed up from that Q, or sorry, from that E, is going to allow them to close the distance there, as Heartbreaker will finally pick up that kill onto the Karma. And I believe that was an unofficial ace, as all 5 members of Lotus did die. And this Viego and this MP team are getting so powerful now.
Yeah, I think I like the initial play on the bot side. They recognized they're able to get the tower there, but once they kept on pushing, that Malphite's able to kind of TP behind him, and this is the infight that ensued afterwards. We saw the initial kill on a Repi. Unfortunately, wasn't quite able to get the nice bounces to go through. Nice job by Low Cortisol to really finish up that kill there, and Gygar able to kind of come over the top with the Silas, but still with the numbers disadvantage here. This is a 3 versus 2. Just kind of continue to press forward, and you know, see the Pantheon ultimately over the top, almost able to really turn this one out, but Excessive doing a nice job with his AoE right there. We saw it multiple times throughout this fight, really able to just like combine the people together with Hui's passive and really do a lot of damage, and able to really secure this fight victory here for Mutah Paradise. Now, obviously, after this fight happened, is a 3,000 gold. But oh, actually, we're live fighting.
Back to live. Dragon Unstoppable Force going to land onto the bot lane of Lotus here, as it looks like they are being routed. Ezreal popping forward, trying to get a kill onto Mixer. Not going to be quite enough here, as Silas is in the back lane. 1 HP Wowza, but it's not going to be enough. Heartbreaker going to take down the Silas, and now with the soul possessed, what will they do? Idris Elba trying to look to potentially continue this fight, but it will not be the case. Third Dragon going the way of Mutah Paradise.
Yeah, and it's just continuous fights over and over again going inside of Mutah Paradise. And we kind of talked about this a little bit where we're saying, hey, I think if Mutah Paradise is able to survive the early aggression and the early kind of lane dominance of Lotus, then they'll be able to really transfer that over. And honestly, it's kind of what's happening here so far. And, you know, honestly, I kind of like where Mutah Paradise is at in this game. They've got a very strong Viego, very strong Hui. And this is kind of the start of that fight we were able to kind of miss towards the beginning, as we see Mutah Paradise positioning fairly aggressively here for the Dragon. They recognize they are stronger, and it's going to be Surenfire pressuring a little bit too aggressively forward. Nautilus step charge over the top, and Silas trying to answer back over as well. So we see the initial kill actually does go over to Surenfire, but nice ultimate from the Malphite there to really try to stall out that backline. And once the initial pressure point did end up falling down, they were able to kind of push her through. I think they were almost able to get that Wowza kill there from Gygar, but unfortunately wasn't quite able to finish up that kill. And now all of a sudden they now are at 3 dragons, going to be at soul point with the next up dragon to come through, and they're going to have a pretty sizable gold lead when that dragon does end up spawning.
And it's so hard for Repi to hit in these fights. The Malphite closed the space down, took a nice ulti onto both the Caitlyn and the Karma, as, you know, Repi, I think, was just trying to run for their life, use the Ghost to try and route themselves, and just not able to do nearly enough. This Malphite is so low econ. I want to note that the gold lead, I believe, is almost entirely, when it was in Lotus's favor, it was almost entirely onto Gygar on this Silas. But with all the low econ that Wowza has been
Silence.
going for, oh, Silas gonna be going in using the Abscond and Abduct onto Excessive. Gonna miss it though. Stun from Pantheon gonna land as a very,
Ooh.
very massive shutdown going the way of Gygar. But Caitlyn now gonna be caught. 90 caliber net to try and walk away. Flash as well. Not gonna be enough. No Spectral Maw, no Heartbreaker to be able to land from this Viego. As Karma doing the best to keep him alive. TP now coming in from this Silas, as it will be the Abscond, the Abduct as well. Gonna land onto the Viego. And the route is now in. And shut down going to Fire. Nautilus rooted up as Malphite is now here. Does have the Unstoppable Force available should they decide to use it. But Fire is taking no damage right now from this low cortisol chip. As Caitlyn now as well in the rear trying to provide some support. Stun gonna land onto Ezreal as Wowza is angling to go for the 80 carry, but it's not gonna be enough. You have to keep your own one alive. Fire trying to keep this one going, as it will just look to be a fight that is petering out, and some nice trading going back and forth as HB getting chipped down. But hey, we are right back in it. The gold lead has swung immediately back into favor with Lotus with a couple of shutdowns.
Yeah, and that's what two 1K shutdowns will do for you if you are Lotus. Obviously, we see this is the chase down after the Hui down on the bottom side. We see Pantheon walking his way up the river to join this fight, as well as the TP from Gygar. And honestly, the entire time this was happening, Rise is just pushing that side lane to really get that pressure point on that side, getting all that CS, all that extra wave. And really, I think they just do a nice job. I think really it's just Mutah Paradise trying to go just a little bit too aggressively. I think once the Caitlyn uses her flash to get out of the way and then uses her net, she's pretty much never ever getting caught up to. And then they continue to chase forward, and that's when the extra members of Lotus are able to get up there and really able to salvage that fight. And like I said, alongside the Rise pushing that top lane here, so able to kind of take a gold lead and really spin it on its head. And now all of a sudden, Lotus is in charge of this game.
Yeah, I mean, Lotus are back in the driver's seat. They are down 3 dragons, so there is a bit of a gold disparity in that sense. But the 3 dragons, I'd argue, are relatively inconsequential. It will be a Cloud Soul, so it's going to be nice for both sides here. Karma obviously getting the most out of that soul. But it will be really nice as well for Gygar to use that that hijack to get a little bit of a speed boost after they grab either that Death Charge or that Unstoppable Force. But, I mean, 1,000 gold in favor of this red side here as we take a quick look at where the disparities are. That is 3,000 in favor of Gygar. Holy moly.
Yeah, the Malphite obviously is very far behind due to the fact they have very low CS numbers. I think at one point they were pretty much just kind of walking around the map and only really ever taking fights and weren't really worrying about catching waves and kind of getting gold that way, which technically if you are a Malphite, having gold income is not necessarily the most important thing because you are just trying to go in and engage in, like, trying to be able to start a fight, but you obviously still need the gold to be able to kind of, be tankier and not necessarily be a complete paper mache. But he is still obviously very, very behind. So it's gonna be really on Gygar. It's gonna be very much on this Rise to really kind of take the fights ahead.
Oh, Reppy, you don't want to walk into that push there. Spectral Maw gonna find a stun onto the Viego, but it will not be enough as the Flash End goes forced to use from the Lotus mid laner. But that does mean that the location Flash Dredgelight coming forward from the Nautilus will land onto Caitlyn, and that's going to be a kill going the way of the Nautilus, though. Fire here trying to get some trading back. TP in from the Malphite. You talked about it before. This guy was perma fighting, but the Malphite going to use the Unstoppable Force onto Pantheon. Does have that GA available, but I don't know if it'll be enough with Reppy walking. Not going to be here soon enough as another kill on to the Lotus jungler, as it will be a 2-for-1 rather, in favor of MP with this dragon alive. And it could be a potential soul for Mutah Paradise. And I think it will be. It looks like Lotus are just going to give this one up. Cloud Soul at 24 minutes into the game. Going to be going the way of Mutah Paradise. A team who has been excelling at these fights here. I was not expecting this. And it seems as though the Caitlyn was not expecting this either. The Flash Dreadline was so good there.
Yeah, unfortunately, they weren't really in decent positions there. Obviously, Reppy starting this out, getting caught out by the Viego, ended up chasing him down, but really the rest of the play afterwards, I think Fire just completed his GA, and for it to be popped right before the Dragon is just really unfortunate for him, not able to have a lot of use for that one to come through. But yeah, like we were saying, this is the Cloud Soul being picked up here. I think obviously one of the inherently better souls in the game, the movement speed to come through, as well as even when you initially ultimate, is very, very nice for champions like Malphite, for Viego, and really for, anyone that is just using their ultimate is always going to be very, very nice to have that extra little boost of movement speed. But you also have the internal movement speed boost that just kind of comes with having the Cloud Soul, which is very, very nice. Movement speed is easily the most underrated part of League of Legends in terms of a attribute to have towards your character. But still, the gold lead in terms of overall stats is relatively even. We do see Aegis Elba able to kind of put pressure on this tier 1, but no one is really down here except for Accept to pick up this tier 2. But Silas is looking for him.
Unstoppable force from Silas with the abduct as well. Excessive just going to go down. A nice kill from the side of Lotus there to be able to knock some down as Caitlyn taking so much damage from the Ezreal. Will eat, kill, lose, is trying to find an angle with that depth charge, but the Heartbreaker going to be here. Two-shot barrage going wide as Redemption comes down to give that Caitlyn a little bit of a boost to health. Still trying to find a fight here, Lotus. Trying to find a way back into this game. The gold lead's still in this favor, but the Soul, as you said, going the way of MP. As Surenfire now trying to walk their way back to their team, but it could accidentally bait them in if they get too close defending their jungler. But on the bot side, I mean, you sort of talked about this earlier on in the game, Orion, how the Soul laners from Lotus have been doing such a good job of just collecting kills, or collecting gold rather, in the side lane while all this nonsense around mid is happening. As, oh my goodness, low cortisol just absolutely has Caitlyn's number here.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why this game does feel as close as it is, because even though the kill score is way in the advantage of Mutah Paradise and the towers are relatively even, I think Lotus has done a good job of salvaging a lot of these plays, putting pressure in side lanes, able to collect all that extra gold. And like we said, you know, with Gygar being up as much gold as he is, like probably 2,500, 3,000 gold still currently, you know, he has, you know, been able to really salvage a lot of these situations for them. So, but unfortunately, like, you know, as much salvaging as they are able to do, they are still only relatively even. Now it obviously has kind of got up to 1k gold, but 1k gold lead at 27 minutes basically is nothing. It's basically like half of a component for everyone on the board. So really it's going to be about, you know, who's actually able to execute all these fights better. Reppy being collapsed on.
Reppy is here. Going to get hit with the Spiraling Despair as Pantheon now coming in with the Grand Skyfall. Excessive trying to walk this way out. Going to use that Cloud Soul as a will, but the Unstoppable Force from Gygar here trying to go in. Idris Elba going to get rooted up now by the Karma Dredgeline. Trying to stall the fight is a great ulti from Wowza. Going to split the fight here. Reppy trying to hit below cortisol as well. Going to be firing those Mystic Shots in, and it is not going to be enough. Surenfire getting that stun on to the side of MP as low cortisol trying to walk this one out. Might have an Arcane Shift in just a moment here. Will be able to do so over this wall, but it will be Baron started up for Lotus.
Yeah, successful fight there. Obviously, they felt like they were able to catch out Reppy on that sideline there with the initial play from the Hui and the Malphite. But that's one of the reasons why we talked about this Pantheon to be able to have that aggressive side, is we just see low cortisol potentially looking to play. It is just him by himself. We've seen this play many times.
Yeah, low cortisol. Trying to find some more trading on to the side of Lotus, as the Ezreal is a bit of a monster here. Gonna Arcane Shift forward here in front of Surenfire's face, but they're trying to just get these recalls off. And it will be the case. Gloppy gonna get that base, but you pay the price of your support, and I think if you're Lotus, you're pretty chill with that. Gold lead now 3,000 in your favor.
Yeah, we've seen that situation many times with AD carries walking into a Baron buff, especially someone like Ezreal, who has so much mobility and so much ability to kind of have that outplay potential. He definitely could have obviously made some magic happen there, but we do see, this is the replay, we do see a live play-by-play happening as well. We do see a bit of a fight. Doesn't look like too much is happening here, but this is the replay I was talking about. They try to make the play initially onto Reppy, but a great play on the back end to say, hey, you know, we're going to counteract it with the Pantheon Ultimate. We had the extra members there in the area, and a great unstoppable force there from Gygar to initially start off the play. And then Idris Elba was almost able to get a couple of kills there and be able to kind of chain him into a play, but he just got a little bit too low, a little bit too fast. And this is low cortisol trying to do a little bit of cooking here. Obviously, this is a fish in a barrel situation. The ultimate was able to come through. I was able to pick up the initial kill there onto Mixture. But like you were saying, just losing your support for Baron control is perfectly fine in this situation.
Yeah, in live, we saw the Nautilus get caught out, but Reppy as well has just died. As we try and fast forward to the play it.
Yeah, I do believe this is going to potentially show this replay here. So you see Silas is going to E forward, potentially looking for a play here onto the Nautilus with a depth charge, but I think it's just going to be a slightly going just a tad bit far. Actually, it's going to be a clean kill on the Nautilus here. Kind of curious to see how Reppy ends up dying.
Yeah, how did Reppy end up dying on the bot side? I feel like it must have.
Oh,
it's just
Viego.
Just walked into Viego. Yeah, but if we go back to live, I think it is really important to see what's going on, as it looks as though we have some Elder Dragon setup going on in 10 seconds time now. We have Gygar in the back, fully spotted on vision though, and it will be the Null. It's gonna land the dredge line and the ulti as Gygar gonna dodge the unstoppable force here with that Zonias, but it will not be enough. Spiraling Despair. Wow, really well played so far. Depth Charge gonna go wide, but it will be the True Shock Barrage not doing just enough damage as the Redemption going to save the top laner. Critically, Gygar has CP to get back to this fight. So now Mutah Paradise have to find a winner to collapse on this before allowing Lotus to get their way back into this fight. Keep in mind, Silas is level 16 right now, so that ulti will be on such a short cooldown. Might be able to take... Oh my goodness, Ezreal going... sorry, Nautilus going so low as Dragon now approaches 10k HP. Dredgeline going to land onto Reppy here, who flashes away, but it will be the Nautilus going down first, and it will be the Hwei following shortly after, and it looks to be a rout from Lotus as Low Cortisol trying to do the same fancy feat magic we saw at the Baron before, but Silas gonna be using the Abscond Abduct. Will land onto the Ezreal though. This champion is so powerful, but will it be enough? Abscond Abduct, will it be enough? No, it will not. The Ezreal will go down, and it will be Elder Dragon going the way of Lotus.
Yeah, and we saw the initial play there onto Gygar. We saw they trying to initially catch him out, but they used so many tools to try to pick up that kill there. This is going to be that initial quick kick pick here onto Reppy. We saw it was a slight picture delay. It just able to pick up the kill there, and then we're going to translate that a little bit into the Dragon. But like I was saying, we saw the initial try to pick there onto the Gygar, and they used Death Charge, they used Unstoppable Force, they used Hwei's ultimate, they used every possible kit in the tool to pick up that kill there. The fact that he was able to survive, TP back into the play, and then able to continue fighting afterwards was honestly, to me, the biggest deal there in terms of actually being able to pick up that fight, as well as on the initial TP play, they were able to get an immense amount of damage onto those first couple of people that were a part of that first play, and really able to kind of take charge of the fight. And honestly, the AoE damage there coming from the Rise was absolutely massive in that team fight. I believe he had just purchased the equal of the Actualizer.
Oh, Room Prison onto the Nautilus, trying to walk this one down. Is going to use that Cloud Soul to their advantage. Another Depth Charge. Will there be another Room Prison available for the Rise? No, not quite yet. Is Idris Elba trying to walk them out? I'm sorry to cut you off. It looked like there was something there.
No, that's all
in fact,
I think
it was just Lotus gaining some space.
Yeah, I think for me the funniest part was every single time Rise tried to W. Actually, here's gonna be the replay. So yeah, so the initial burst damage there onto the Nautilus, and we see Idris Elba.
Why is Viego going in first?
Yeah, the most fed member on the team is this Idris Elba on the Viego, and just trying to face tank that many people. He's the one that kind of needs to be going last, like Seth was saying a second ago, to really make sure that he's able to execute a lot of the low health members with his Heartbreaker towards the very back end of those fights, and he really needs his teammates to set him up. But like I was saying, there was no Hwei ultimate, there was no Death Charge, there was no Unstoppable Force, so those champions weren't really in positions to go so aggressively forward. So unfortunately for them, that does end up being that they weren't able to secure the Elder Dragon, and now all of a sudden this game has absolutely ballooned here for Lotus. It's a 9,000 gold lead with the Elder in their back pocket, and they're really going to try to do as much possible damage to the infrastructure base of Mutah Paradise.
True Shot Barrage going to try and get some chunk, as it will be a Depth Charge landing on to the Rise there. Reppy going down first as the first reset will be in. Now Lord Cortisol trying to walk them down, as it will be a flash forward from Viego to try and land a root onto Sternfire, and it will land as the Unstoppable Force now from from Silas rather, will find the kill onto Idris Elba, who quickly gets Depth Charge, as it will be so much damage coming out from this way. The Ezreal is free firing in this fight. So much damage coming out from so much range rather, as well as now trying to create the space for their carries to hit. Flash coming out from Mixer to dodge that Hwei Q, and that will be it. It will be a 2 for 2, but it will be critically the damaging members from Lotus here, so no Baron on the table anymore, and it will be that Elder Dragon as well, I believe, timed out just before that fight started. I don't think we saw a single Elder execute that.
Yeah, I think it was starting to time out right about here, and so I think they recognized it and say, hey, Reppy's a little bit too far forward here. We can start seeing him, and we're able to kind of pick up the kill here. Unstoppable Force landing onto 2 members there. And even though Lotus is up so much gold, if you're able to take 1 member out of the fight so quickly, you can really kind of turn the tides here. And I thought this play right here, the hijack on Unstoppable Force, I figured it was going to be much better than it was, but it only ended up hitting the 1 member on the side of Mutah Paradise here, so unfortunately. And then Caitlyn trying to E forward aggressively, but an amazing hook with the AoE damage from this Hui, who's an absolute monster at this stage of the game, able to pick up the kill there. And, you know, obviously nice mechanical plays a little bit here towards the back end, so everybody else was able to survive. But still, I mean, honestly, at this stage of the game, or I guess for that play right there for Mutah Paradise, it really is just a base-saving play. It's not really a game-winning play, unfortunately, for them with how deep they were into the base. But like you were saying, if they were able to just kind of play a little bit safer and say, hey, let's just be a little bit more safe, let's go pick up the Baron, it would have been a much more detrimental play for the side of Mutah Paradise. But, you know, obviously Lotus is still very much in control of this game. Silas is pushing in that bot side. He does have TP. He is able to kind of join that play, and no one is currently matching him. So I'd imagine someone is likely going to have to end up going down there. So Lotus is going to be able to use this time to walk into the enemy blue side area. Place a lot of that vision.
TP. Excessive does not have TP here.
Yeah, and I think Lotus is recognizing that, saying, hey, the mid laner is the one answering this play. He cannot join this play. He's the one actually winning a lot of these fights for
Nautilus trying now to create space. The Baron going lower and lower. 7,000 HP will be the Nautilus trying to go first. Will pop that Aftershock, and Depth Charge will now be hijacked from the Silas here. As now flash forward onto the Ezreal. Low Cortisol forced to use the Arcane Shift and the Flash, but it will not be enough as the Abduct just going wide with a blind E from the Silas, but it will be that 1-for-0 with a lot of summoners blown. Critically, that Flash on the Ezreal no longer available for this Baron restart, and you said it, right? The no TP available from Excessive meant that Silas was able to get there much sooner than the rest, or sorry, than the Hui, as Baron now going to go down to 5k, and it will be MP trying to get that trade onto the mid tower. They will be able to do so with those crystals. Stacking up very, very, very nicely. Will allow them to do a lot of damage, but Lotus are not going to let them walk away from this one. Fear going to land onto the Rise now, as the Spiraling Despair will go into the backline, though. Surenfire too far forward. We'll use that E, as the Silas will try and match now the engage. Viego going to get their first reset. Gets the E onto Surenfire, as the Heartbreaker is going to try very hard to carry this fight, and it will not matter. Ezreal trying to kite, trying to find as much damage, but will not be enough. Double kill for the Caitlyn. Gloppy doing their best now after that rough early game, and the Caitlyn is truly online, as now Elder Dragon. This game has been going at such a pace. Elder Dragon is already up again.
Yeah, it's the second Elder Dragon of the game, and just like what I was saying, you know, the fact that Excessive is on that bottom side of the map and Silas having to answer, they really didn't have any business walking into the Baron. And unfortunately for them, they ended up losing their life for it. But Elder Dragon being taken here, Excessive trying to make a play here onto him. Hui does have the damage because Silas here.
Yeah, Spiraling Despair doing so much damage to the Silas. The burn coming out from the Hui. Oh my goodness. I don't know if you want to land that Depth Charge. As Reppy now here going to try and land the Rune Prison onto the Nautilus. This could be the end of the game if there are deaths here. Here comes the TP from the Rise. It will be Silas almost going down. The burn. Not enough. Shielding from Mixture going to keep their top laner alive. As the Elder Dragon going down. You would have to imagine, what kind of game are we in that we have 2 Elder Dragons and we're still in this one? What is going on?
Yeah, to be fair, for people that are watching that are mostly used to CCS, this is not CCS. This is the NACL Open qualifiers, to kind of put that in perspective. But this is the fight that Initiate ended up playing afterwards. We see Surenfire going in a little bit deep here. He is 1 versus 3, and nice immune there from the Viego to actually immune Silas's ultimate force, able to come through. And we're almost able to pick up the kill here, but a nice stasis to come through by Geiger on that play, and Reppy also going to use his same stasis to really make sure he does not give the extra reset there onto Idris Elba, really making sure that it was the reason why they were able to kind of pick up this fight. Low Cortisol almost, unfortunately, able to kite this one out, but really good display there by Lotus of their mechanical prowess to say, hey, this is how we're actually able to be in the situation. Pantheon's looking for an ultimate.
Deja vu, Orion. Grand Skyfall going to come in. The hook will land onto Pantheon, who's just trying to create some space, and will be the Spiraling Despair landing onto almost the entire backline of Lotus here.
Well, Caitlin's dead.
Caitlyn will go down, does have that GA available, but it will be the trade of that Malphite there, as we see Geiger trying to punish the backline of MP, but it will not be enough. Forced to use that stasis there, and with Baron and with Elder, Lotus are trying to finish this one out. Excessive, low on mana, trying to do some damage. Same with Low Cortisol, trying to fire those Mystic Shots in, but Surenfire as well. But it will be the first Viego going in first. No, but it will be the Dragon stunned now onto the Ezreal. Low Cortisol, no flash available, no barrier available, will go down, and it will be Lotus blowing up the Nexus now, and it will be a 2-0 for Lotus in the NACL OQs.
Ooh, probably a lot sloppier, and probably not the way they intended this one to go from the side of Lotus, but, you know, Oh, at the end of the day, especially for a tournament like this, where if you keep winning, you keep making your way down the line, a win is a win for
Is a
them.
win.
So I think
Exactly.
they're probably not going to be very satisfied with how this one ended up playing out. But relatively, like I said, I think they showed some really good moments with their mechanical prowess in a lot of these team fights and the ability to kind of move and dictate how the fights were being played out. But honestly, credit to Mutah Paradise. I mean, what they had no bans. They're starting with a game loss, so I think honestly, if they can kind of continue this play, kind of going forward with the tournament, they could make some waves.
Yeah, there is a losers bracket, so Mutah Paradise definitely has a chance to try and continue to make their case to qualify for the NACL. Um, but yeah, I mean Lotus for sure. There's always reviews, even in games that you win. We saw a lot of bright spots though in this game. Geiger on that Silas. Granted, of the counter picks you can get, that is probably one of the most OP ones you can get is Silas into
Yeah,
Malphite.
yeah,
But I mean, you have to imagine with the I'm thinking of the Elder fight Orion where Geiger absolutely styled on the entirety of Mutah Paradise, outrunning them, flashing, dashing, stasising to keep themselves alive. And I mean, credit as well has to go to Lotus for stalling them out long enough to allow Geiger to reset and get that TP back into the fight. It was very impressive. As we take a look here now at this post game screenshot, a lot of damage coming out from excessive and low cortisol, who were trying their very, very best. And is this live? is this...
yeah. Trying to
this is awesome.
slowly,
This
yeah,
is awesome.
slowly but surely repositioning the stats here by our production team. But it is one of those things, like you were saying. I think that was the biggest point for me in that game. I think if Gygar does go down, even though they ended up using that many tools, the 5 versus 4 would have ended up being a lot more successful for them. But unfortunately, they just weren't quite able to secure that kill. And with the TP able to come back, they were actually able to apply a lot more threats onto the rest of their members. And there was a couple moments there, like we were saying, that Viego going a little bit too aggressively. If they had those tools to play in that fight with the 5v5, who knows how that fight would have ended up playing out. I would be willing to bet that Mutah Paradise may have actually killed more members, if not even won the fight with how that fight was looking towards the beginning of it.
Yeah, I mean, you always got to take these types of games with a grain of salt. We talked about it sort of at the start that Lotus is a much higher seed in this tournament. And while, TSM could take a scrim off of prime T1, it
Yeah.
is always a likelihood that, a game could not go your way. It could potentially snowball out of control. And it was looking that way a little bit in this game with the way it was going. But I mean, credit to Lotus. They were able to continuously make sure that they're getting the waves and the XP so they could keep themselves in it. Um, Also in these types of games, when you are that massive favorite, especially when you go in already up a game, I feel like you tend to try more things. You tend to flip a little bit more heavily. You tend to look for the plays that maybe you get told not to look for because maybe it's too important that you don't go for that play, but maybe you're like, I want to try this. I think we can do it. This is the environment that, would be okay doing it. And, you know, sometimes that happens and then you're able to still win because you're the better team.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying a little bit, kind of in that game where I felt like Lotus was being a little bit sloppy, a little bit careless in a lot of those situations, kind of skipping some steps that they probably wouldn't normally skip if they were playing a quote unquote opponent that they feel like is closer to their level. But that's why I was saying, credit to Mutah Paradise saying, hey, like, we are like just as good and are able to compete in certain ways, and they're able to kind of really make sure that they, make a name for themselves. And I think, if you are Lotus, you're able to kind of take this game and say, hey, we can't really afford to disrespect our opponents if we're going to make a serious run in this tournament. And, this is a NACL open qualifiers. This is very much a something that is like a very big deal. And they're trying to play their way into a potential promotional spot. This is a new thing for NACL/LCS that they're working their way up. And, obviously these players, I mean, they wouldn't be playing in a tournament like this if they didn't have major goals and aspirations to be a very, very good team. And so it's one of those things that, that they're trying their best. They're adjusting. A lot of these teams too are fairly newer. We're kind of looking at it. A lot of Lotus's guys have been playing together for maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe. So, when you haven't had a lot of time to build that synergy, to build that trust, it can still be a lot about playing by yourself and not really looking to play as a team, which we kind of saw that a little bit, I feel like, with Lotus at times. But towards the back end, their mechanical skill and their ability to just simply play the game was one of the reasons why I felt like they were actually able to pick up the victory in this one.
Yeah, and that's the way these OQs sort of go. Is a lot of these players, as you said, have not been playing together for very long, and unfortunately, in the case for some of these teams, they will not be playing together ever again. And so every single game here, while you are trying to win for your team, you're trying to show out, you're trying to do your best to show off for potentially these academy teams for these higher tier OQ teams. Um, and I mean, this is kind of the game to do it. Lotus, in this bracket was, I believe, like a 5 seed out of like 60 or something like that, potentially. So looking very solid here as they move on to day number 2, which I believe starts. I believe we will be starting our coverage here at about 4 o'clock Eastern time. I'm still waiting on confirmation of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll be back here at 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. But Orion, you got anything else before we head out of here?
No, I mean, I think like we said several times now, but credit to Mutah Paradise. I feel like they actually played that one fairly well. But I think it is good that Lotus is able to kind of have some of that resiliency very early on into the tournament. That way they can say, hey, let's not let the things happening from this one and kind of continue going forward, and that we're able to really make sure that they're able to kind of say, hey, like if we continue playing this way, we may not actually go that far in the tournament. So having a game this early into the tournament that's kind of shaky can sometimes wake you up and say, all right, let's get back to serious. And it could also be partially due to the fact that this game was supposed to be played 3 hours
Three
ago
hours
or
ago,
something
yeah.
like that. So
Yeah.
sometimes that does play into it, where you're like, oh man, like you're more relaxed, you're not as serious and all that stuff. But that's kind of more of an excuse than anything else. But yeah, overall I think it was well played to both teams. I'm excited for it to continue tomorrow.
Yeah. With that, we are going to wrap this one up here. Again, I've been Septi, joined alongside Orion with Pop Tart and Mr. Fantastic in the back. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. with the continuation coverage of Lotus's time here in the NACL OQs. But thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you all tomorrow.